In fiction, tragedy is not just about death. It is about longing, loss, and the cruel distance between who someone could have been and who they are forced to become. The most tragic characters are not villains in the traditional sense, nor are they pure heroes. They are wounded souls shaped by betrayal, fate, fear, and impossible choices. Whether born into violence, burdened by prophecy, rejected by society, or crushed under responsibility, they struggle against worlds that seem designed to break them. Few characters in fiction embody relentless, almost cosmic suffering like Guts from Berserk. His life begins not with warmth or welcome, but with death. Born from his mother's corpse beneath a hanging tree, delivered into a world that seems to reject him from the very first breath. There is no innocence in his childhood, no sanctuary. Raised among mercenaries, he is shaped by violence before he can even comprehend what it means. Abuse, bloodshed, and survival become his earliest lessons. He grows up believing that affection is weakness and that trust is a prelude to betrayal. The battlefield becomes his home, and the sword becomes the only language he truly understands. Yet, what makes Guts truly tragic is not merely the brutality of his circumstances, but the fragile humanity that persists within him. Beneath the hardened exterior is someone who longs, though he barely allows himself to admit it, for belonging. When he joins the Band of the Hawk, he experiences something dangerously close to happiness. Friendship with comrades who respect him, rivalry and admiration with Griffith, love with Casca. For the first time, Guts imagines a future beyond endless war. He dares to believe he might be more than a weapon. That fragile hope is obliterated during the eclipse. In one of fiction's most harrowing betrayals, everything Guts built is consumed in horror. He is forced to witness unspeakable cruelty inflicted upon those he loves, powerless to stop it. Branded as a sacrifice, hunted by demons, he becomes a man literally marked by fate. From that moment on, his existence is a struggle against inevitability itself. He fights not just monsters, but a universe governed by cruel causality. Every swing of his blade is defiance against destiny. But tragedy defines him not only in suffering, but in endurance. Guts survives. He keeps walking forward. He protects Casca despite his own shattered psyche. He forms new bonds even though loss seems inevitable. His rage is immense, but so is his capacity for loyalty. Peace always hovers just beyond reach, and yet he continues. Guts is tragic because his life is a war without end, and because even in that endless darkness, he still clings to the faintest possibility of light.
Zeus! Your son has returned.
Kratos, the Ghost of Sparta. Few characters in gaming embody rage, grief, and the brutal cost of vengeance like Kratos from God of War and its later reinvention in God of War Mors. His story is not simply about killing gods. It is about a man who destroys everything he touches and must live with the consequences. Kratos begins as a Spartan general, defined by strength and ambition. On the battlefield, facing defeat, he calls upon Ares for salvation. In exchange for victory, he unknowingly surrenders his autonomy. Manipulated by the very god he serves, Kratos is tricked into slaughtering his own wife and daughter. Their ashes are fused to his skin, turning him pale, marking him forever as the Ghost of Sparta. This is the core of his tragedy. His greatest sin is engineered by the being he trusted. His grief is eternal, but so is his guilt. No matter how many enemies he slays, he cannot undo that night. His war against Olympus is fueled by vengeance, but it is also fueled by self-hatred. Each god he kills, Poseidon, Hades, Zeus, brings catharsis, yet leaves ruin in its wake. The world collapses under his fury. Oceans flood, skies darken, civilization crumbles. Kratos becomes what he hates, a destroyer driven by ego and pain. When he finally kills Zeus, the act does not free him, it empties him. Revenge does not resurrect the dead, it only deepens the silence. What makes Kratos profoundly tragic is that he survives. He is forced to endure the aftermath of his own wrath. In the Norse saga, years later, he is no longer the screaming embodiment of rage, but a haunted father trying desperately not to repeat history. With Atreus, he attempts restraint. He teaches discipline instead of domination. Yet he fears himself. He fears the monster he once was. Every lesson he gives his son is shadowed by his own failure as a father in the past. Kratos' tragedy evolves from explosive vengeance to quiet remorse. He is a god who cannot escape his humanity and a man who cannot escape his sins. His hands are stained with divine blood, but what truly torments him is memory. The ashes on his skin are more than a curse. They are a reminder that no matter how powerful he becomes, he is still the man who failed to protect his family. In the end, Kratos is not tragic because he suffers alone. He is tragic because he causes suffering and must carry its weight. His story is about the illusion of revenge, the burden of guilt, and the fragile hope that even someone who shattered worlds might still learn to build instead of destroy.
I guess I'm afraid.
Arthur Morgan, the Dying Outlaw. In Red Dead Redemption 2, Arthur Morgan stands as one of the most layered tragic figures in modern storytelling. Raised by outlaws and molded by Dutch von der Linde's grand rhetoric about freedom and loyalty, Arthur grows up believing the gang is his family. He robs and kills not out of sadism, but out of conviction that he belongs to something meaningful. The American frontier is dying, but Arthur clings to the illusion that they are fighting for independence rather than merely surviving. The slow collapse of that illusion is what makes his story devastating. As the world modernizes and law enforcement tightens its grip, Dutch's ideals curdle into paranoia. Arthur begins to see cracks in the philosophy he dedicated his life to. Loyalty becomes manipulation, brotherhood becomes exploitation, and then comes the diagnosis: tuberculosis. His body, like the Wild West itself, is failing. Confronted with mortality, Arthur undergoes profound introspection. He begins to question the violence he once accepted without hesitation. He reflects on lost love, broken promises, and the kind of man he truly is. Redemption becomes his final pursuit, not through grand gestures, but through quiet choices. He protects the innocent when he can. He ensures John Marston has a chance at escape. He chooses compassion over cruelty. His death, watching the sunrise with fading breath, is not triumphant, but deeply human. He cannot erase his past. He cannot undo the harm he caused, but he can choose who he is at the end. Arthur Morgan is tragic because he becomes morally awakened only when time is almost gone. His story is not about glory, it is about regret, growth, and the fragile possibility of redemption in a merciless world.
Anakin's gone. I am what remains.
Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One who fell. Anakin Skywalker's descent in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, is one of the most operatic tragedies in modern myth. Born into slavery, gifted with extraordinary power, and declared the Chosen One, Anakin grows up under impossible expectation. He is told he will bring balance to the Force, yet he is denied the emotional guidance necessary to wield his power responsibly. The Jedi Order preaches detachment, but Anakin is defined by attachment. He loves fiercely. He fears loss intensely. The trauma of losing his mother scars him deeply, and his visions of Padme's death ignite an obsession with control. His tragedy is rooted not in malice, but in fear. Fear of helplessness. Fear of abandonment. Fear of grief. Palpatine manipulates that fear masterfully, offering forbidden knowledge and promises of salvation. Anakin convinces himself each step into darkness is justified. He does not wake up one day as Darth Vader. He slides there gradually, rationalizing atrocity in the name of protection. When he kneels before his new master, it is the culmination of desperation, pride, and manipulation. Encased in black armor after his catastrophic defeat, he becomes more machine than man, a walking symbol of his own spiritual imprisonment. He achieves power, but loses everything: his wife, his freedom, his identity. Redemption arrives decades later, but only through immense sacrifice. Anakin's tragedy lies in the cruel irony that in trying to prevent death, he becomes an agent of it. He was meant to bring balance, yet he nearly destroys the galaxy.
You can be black or yellow or white, it doesn't matter. What does matter is the size of your heart and the strength of your character.
Frankenstein's monster, the abandoned creation in Frankenstein. The monster represents tragedy born from rejection. Created through scientific ambition and immediately abandoned, he enters existence as a blank slate. He feels cold, hunger, confusion, but also wonder. He observes humanity from afar, learning language and emotion in secret. He reads, he thinks, he dreams of companionship. Yet everywhere he turns, he is met with horror. His appearance condemns him before he can speak. Violence greets him before kindness can. His creator, Victor Frankenstein, recoils in disgust instead of accepting responsibility. The monster's longing for connection becomes unbearable. When he pleads for a companion and is denied, it shatters his final hope. His subsequent violence is horrific, but it emerges from profound loneliness. He becomes what the world insists he is. By the end, consumed by grief and guilt, he does not celebrate vengeance. He mourns his own existence. He understands morality better than those who condemned him. His tragedy is existential. He did not ask to be born, yet he must suffer the consequences of his creator's hubris.
Each of us lives, dependent and bound by our individual knowledge and our awareness.
Itachi Uchiha, the Silent Martyr. In Naruto, Itachi Uchiha is introduced as a villain who massacred his entire clan. Cold, calculating, unforgivable. But as the layers peel back, the horror transforms into sacrifice. Caught between a brewing coup and the threat of civil war, Itachi faces an impossible choice. Allow conflict to devastate his village or eliminate his own bloodline to preserve fragile peace. He chooses the unthinkable and chooses to bear the hatred alone. He allows his younger brother Sasuke to believe he is a monster. He becomes an international criminal. He dies despised. Every action is calibrated to protect others, even if it means destroying himself emotionally and morally. Itachi's tragedy is profound isolation. He cannot seek comfort, he cannot defend his name. His love is expressed through silence and self-sacrifice. When the truth is revealed, it reframes him not as a villain, but as a tragic guardian who shouldered atrocity to prevent greater catastrophe. He lives and dies misunderstood.
Where's my wife and son?
John Marston, the man who couldn't escape his past in Red Dead Redemption. John Marston is defined by his attempt to escape who he once was. Former outlaw, former gang member, he seeks a modest dream, land, family, stability. But the government drags him back into violence, weaponizing his history against him. He hunts down former comrades not out of vengeance, but coercion. Each death pulls him further from the peace he desires. When he finally earns his family's freedom and builds a ranch, hope flickers, but it is temporary. Betrayed by the very forces that promised amnesty, he faces overwhelming odds. His final act, stepping out of the barn to confront a firing squad, is pure sacrifice. He knows he will die. He chooses it so his wife and son may live. John Marston is tragic because he does everything demanded of him and is still denied peace. Redemption, in his world, is fleeting and fragile. King Kong, the tragic titan. King Kong, most famously portrayed in King Kong, is tragedy in towering form. Though feared as a monster, he is ultimately a creature torn from his home and exploited by a world that does not understand him. On Skull Island, he is powerful and sovereign. In New York, he is chained, displayed, and reduced to spectacle. His bond with Anne reveals his gentler nature. He is capable of curiosity, protection, even affection. Yet that very connection seals his fate. Climbing the Empire State Building as planes circle overhead, Kong is not a conqueror, but a desperate being clinging to the only kindness he has known. He dies not as a villain, but as a victim of fear, exploitation, and a civilization that destroys what it cannot control.